There are enemies who will literally crawl through the mud to spy on you. But few, and I mean few, are foolish enough to wedge themselves into a dark, cramped root cellar that happens to be hosting three very pungent skunks, smack dab in the middle of their mating season. Man, I can still hear her scream, that high-pitched, guttural sound, like a banshee being doused in rotten eggs and sulfuric acid. It happened yesterday, and honestly, it was the most satisfying thing I've ever witnessed. If you're watching this while scrolling through your fridge or trying to enjoy a quiet evening, maybe bookmark it, because this story, the story of Brenda and the basement of destiny, is messy. It's about petty control, wildlife rescue, real estate corruption, and the moment I realized that sometimes the universe delivers justice in the most unbelievably stinky package. And if you happen to be watching this right now from someone else's basement, you know what to do. Drop a comment below, and maybe I'll send the police to help you out, or at least bring you a gas mask. My name is Caleb Vance, and 6 months ago, I moved to Willow Creek Estates, a community that looked like something out of a perfectly curated magazine. Manicured lawns, bespoke mailboxes, and an HOA that controlled everything from the shade of beige on your trim to the height of the geraniums you were allowed to plant. I'm a freelance conservation documentarian, a wildlife photographer and content creator, specializing in the animals everyone else dismisses. My move was supposed to give me quiet space and access to the nearby Cedar Ridge Preserve, a perfect backdrop for my work. Instead, I ran straight into the wildest, most destructive predator I've ever encountered. Brenda Sterling, the 57-year-old president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. I met her on day 2. I was unloading a stack of expensive telephoto lenses from my old pickup, and there she was, gliding across my lawn like a tax collector, clipboard in hand, a smile that looked bolted onto her face. "Welcome to the neighborhood, Mr. Vance," she chirped, her eyes already scanning for defects. She handed me a 90-page document. "This is our covenant. I suggest you memorize sections C through F, specifically regarding acceptable flora and fauna. And just a note, your grass is precisely half an inch over regulation, and that old truck of yours is visible from the street, a minor eyesore we will need to discuss." Before I could even introduce myself, she was power walking away, leaving me with this cold, sinking feeling, like I'd just leased a condo inside a very strict boarding school. Thankfully, not everyone was a Brenda clone. I quickly befriended Mrs. Eleanor Rossi, a sweet, 70-something Italian woman who'd been there since the community was built. She brought me the best homemade cannolis and the worst stories about Brenda. "Be careful, dear," she warned, stirring her coffee with a worried look. "Brenda's driven 5 families out in 3 years. Nobody crosses her. She used to be some kind of executive at Apex Development until they quietly let her go for some funny business. Something about manipulating zoning for a big project. Now she runs this place like her personal empire." That detail about Apex, a major regional developer, stuck in my mind, but at the time, I just figured it was classic suburban gossip. For a few months, I was just a blip on Brenda's radar. A warning about a slightly faded patio umbrella, a note about my recycling bins being left out 10 minutes too long. Annoying, but manageable. That changed one rainy October night when I discovered a family of striped skunks huddled under my back deck. The adult female had a nasty leg injury, and her 2 kids looked frail and starving. As a rehabilitator, I couldn't just leave them. I carefully moved them into my basement, which I had fully equipped with state-of-the-art ventilation and cleanable surfaces for exactly this kind of emergency. I called my friend, Dr. Marcus Bell, a wildlife vet, to come check them out the next day. Caring for skunks is tedious, but rewarding. I named the mother Stripe for her distinctive marking. Marcus confirmed my fears. The leg needed careful, long-term bandaging, and the kits were severely malnourished. "Good news is they'll recover, Caleb," he said, carefully checking the ventilation. "Bad news is, judging by the male kit's behavior, we are rapidly approaching peak mating season." He gave me a sympathetic look. "You know what that means. The scent glands go into overdrive. It's not the defensive spray, but the musk alone. Even with your setup, you might want to warn the neighbors." I doubled down on cleaning protocols, enzyme sprays, and making sure my charcoal filters were fresh, but Marcus was right. That musky, earthy but sharp smell, that powerful, organic scent that tells the world, I am a skunk, and I am ready to mingle, started to permeate the basement. On rare evenings, when the wind shifted just right, a faint, almost undeniable whiff would drift into the yard. That's when Brenda noticed. I caught her first red-handed, crouched behind a lilac bush, her phone pointed right at my basement window, snapping blurry evidence. Our eyes met through the glass for a split second before she scrambled away, her floral dress flapping like a flag of war. I sighed, knowing the fight had just moved from the geraniums to something much more serious. Sure enough, the next morning, there it was, an official HOA notice taped to my front door. Violation 42B, unauthorized housing of potentially noxious wildlife. I had 48 hours to remove the animals or face a fine of $1,000 a day. The first HOA meeting was a circus. Brenda, flanked by two seemingly spineless board members, sat at the front, eyes narrowed. "Mr. Vance believes he is above our rules," she declared, projecting my grainy skunk photos onto the screen. "These animals carry disease. They will lower all of our property values by 20%. When it was my turn, I calmly presented my state wildlife rehabilitation permit, my certifications, and a detailed explanation from Dr. Bell about state laws protecting rehabilitation efforts. "We are legally protected, Mrs. Sterling," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "These animals are injured, and their stay is temporary. Forcing me to move them would violate state conservation laws, not just your community standard." Brenda's face was a mask of furious concentration. She tried to call for an immediate vote, but even her board members hesitated. Finally, an older member suggested a compromise. I'd be given 2 weeks, provided there were absolutely no odor issues. The motion passed, much to Brenda's visible, shaking frustration. As the meeting broke up, I overheard her hissing to her cronies. "I know he's hiding something. Nobody cares about those stinking creatures for free. I will find evidence, and I will drive him out of Willow Creek." This is when Mrs. Rossi's old gossip suddenly became critically important. I invited her over, and over a cup of tea, she laid out the theory. Brenda gets a kickback for every house Apex Development acquires in this neighborhood. They've been trying to assemble enough land for a huge commercial center, but there's still a few houses short. My house, with its large corner lot near the main road, was prime real estate. Brenda's aggressive enforcement wasn't about maintaining community standards. It was about real estate manipulation and cold, hard cash. My skunks weren't just a nuisance. They were the perfect weapon to devalue my property and force a quick sale. The central conflict was now clear: me and the skunks versus Brenda and her $1 million scheme. Over the next week, the harassment escalated into outright psychological warfare. I received 10 new violation notices in 2 days, everything from unapproved window dressings to excessive shade tree density. She would patrol my property line with a ruler, then later that night, my security camera caught her and her sidekick trying to jiggle the lock on my side door. I filed a police report with Officer Reyes, our local patrolman, but without clear intent, he couldn't do much. Then came the fake official court summons, instructing me to appear for endangering the community. I was being buried in paperwork and intimidation. I had to fight smarter. Dr. Bell and I reviewed the town's original HOA charter and discovered that half of Brenda's most aggressive rules were either outdated or never properly ratified by a community vote. Armed with this legal knowledge, I started organizing. I met with a handful of neighbors who had also suffered under Brenda's iron fist. We had a unified front, ready for the next meeting. But Brenda, now desperate, was getting reckless. My camera system recorded her and her sidekick, Gary, planning the final blow. I was scheduled to give a small presentation at the university the following evening. "While he's busy talking about squirrels, I'm going into that basement, Gary," she said, the shadows obscuring her features. "I'm going to film those disease things, I'm going to get the proof, and I'm going to call animal control to seize them permanently. Then we'll see how much the nature lover likes living here." I turned off the video, looking over at Marcus, who was helping me prepare medications. "She really doesn't know what she's walking into, does she?" I asked, a dark, mischievous grin spreading across my face. Marcus shook his head, that kind of slow, knowing shake only a man who has dealt with thousands of skunk sprays can truly manage. "No, Caleb, but she's about to get the smelliest, most visceral lesson in wildlife defense she's ever had." Marcus and I spent the day preparing. We didn't set a trap. We simply made the environment hostile to unexpected intruders. We strategically rearranged items near the skunk enclosure to maximize noise and visual disturbance. My primary goal was to ensure the skunks felt threatened, triggering their natural, legally protected defense mechanism. That evening, I was theoretically at the university, but I was actually parked down the street, watching my security feed on my laptop. At 8:15 p.m., right on schedule, Brenda and Gary crept into my backyard. Brenda pulled out a hairpin and began expertly picking the lock on the reinforced basement door. High definition. Time-stamped. Trespassing, crystal clear. She slipped inside, smartphone held up like a lantern, creeping down the concrete stairs. Gary remained outside, nervously scanning the street. The moment Brenda reached the bottom step, I triggered the surprise. I hit the remote switch for the basement lights and a security sensor I'd placed near the stairs. The sudden, blinding light and the sharp noise made Brenda yelp and drop her phone, which skittered across the floor with a clatter. That was all it took. The lights, the noise, the human intruder. It was the perfect storm for three already highly sensitized skunks nearing the end of mating season. The moment the first skunk, Little Stripe Jr., the male kit, felt threatened, he turned, raised his tail, and let loose. What happened next was captured in horrifying, glorious detail. The first blast, a powerful, oily mist, hit Brenda square in the face. She froze, her body going rigid, eyes wide like saucers. She let out a gasp that quickly devolved into a strangled, agonizing scream. This wasn't just a whiff. This was a concentrated, full-power dose of skunk defense, mixed with the already powerful mating musk. Experts say skunk spray is a chemical cocktail of thiols, essentially rotten eggs mixed with burning tires, and I swear, I could smell it through the ventilation of my car, a block away. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" she shrieked, blindly clawing at her eyes, trying to wipe away the oily residue. She spun around, desperately looking for the door, but the security feature I'd installed a week prior locked automatically behind her. Gary, help me," she sobbed, banging on the heavy metal door. But Gary was already halfway down the street, having seen the initial blast and heard the banshee scream. The skunks weren't done. Stripe, the mother, seeing her kits distressed, released her own potent defense, a direct, yellow-tinged blast aimed low. It soaked right through Brenda's pristine linen pants. She crumpled, gagging, dry heaving violently, trying to hold her breath, only to gasp for more air and pull the noxious chemicals deeper into her lungs. I watched her crawl across the concrete floor, leaving a thick, glistening trail of skunk oil, trying to reach the tiny, high basement windows. It was 15 minutes of pure, unadulterated, skunk-scented horror. Then I made the call. "Officer Reyes, I'd like to report a trespasser. My security system just showed someone broke into my basement." When Officer Reyes and his backup arrived, they had to put on masks before going down, even Reyes, a big guy who'd seen everything. They pulled a sobbing, green-tinged Brenda out of my root cellar. Her carefully styled hair was matted, her expensive blouse was stained yellow, and the stench was so overwhelming that the neighbors started turning on their porch lights just to see what kind of chemical spill had occurred. "Mrs. Sterling," Reyes said, trying not to breathe too deeply, "you're under arrest for criminal trespass." Brenda, her voice hoarse and broken, could only manage, I'll sue you all, especially you, Vance." But the only thing anyone could focus on was the fact that the stench radiating off her was actively burning their nostrils. The fallout was immediate. News of the skunking of Sterling spread like wildfire. Brenda was released on bail, but she had to live with a stench that nothing, no tomato juice, no specialized solvent, could fully eliminate. It clung to her for weeks. Neighbors avoided her. Her HOA meetings had to be done on Zoom, because no one, not even her remaining loyalists, wanted to be in the same room. Gary, realizing he was a pawn in a felony, finally bailed on her, agreeing to testify that Brenda had explicitly planned the break-in. Then came the final, satisfying blow. I had been working with Mr. Daniel Kent, an influential retired corporate attorney who lived 3 doors down and who had always implicitly supported Brenda because he was obsessed with property values. At the emergency HOA meeting, called by Brenda to finally expel me for endangering the community, Mr. Kent suddenly requested to speak. He shared his screen, and there it was, a detailed timeline of emails between Brenda and Apex development executives. The documents, which he had obtained during an unrelated due diligence process, proved everything. Brenda wasn't just being petty. She was being paid a 5% commission on every property Apex acquired, a kickback scheme that had netted her over $150,000 in 3 years. She had used her HOA position to systematically harass homeowners, devalue their properties, and force sales to Apex so they could meet their land acquisition quota. My house was highlighted in bright red on the screen. Prime target, corner lot, must sell by Q4. The Zoom meeting erupted in furious chaos. Neighbors who had sold their homes cheaply after years of harassment unmuted themselves, screaming their stories of financial loss and emotional duress. I've already submitted this evidence to the State Real Estate Commission and the District Attorney's Office, Mr. Kent stated, his deep voice slicing through the noise. Mrs. Sterling is facing criminal charges for fraud, conspiracy, and breach of fiduciary duty. Apex Development has already been served subpoenas. Brenda, her face on the screen now a sickly, pale green, the faint digital image of her still radiating the stink in my imagination, tried to deny it. It's a misunderstanding. Daniel, you supported me. Mr. Kent just looked directly into his camera. I support integrity, Brenda. And when I bought my home here, I swore to be a good neighbor. Something you clearly never understood. Officer Reyes, who had also joined the Zoom call to discuss the criminal trespassing charges, unmuted himself and delivered the coup de grace. Mrs. Sterling, I suggest you retain an attorney immediately. This investigation is now a criminal matter. Brenda's entire world collapsed right there on the screen. She resigned immediately. Mrs. Rossi was voted in as interim president, 25 votes to 1 Brenda's. In the end, Brenda accepted a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to 4 felony counts, received 18 months of house arrest, 5 years probation, and was ordered to pay $750,000 in restitution to the homeowners she had manipulated. Apex Development was fined millions. A few months later, I released Stripe and her fully recovered kits back into the Cedar Ridge Preserve, but not before hosting a small, educational community event about coexisting with wildlife. My YouTube channel exploded after I uploaded the video titled, "Karen hid in my cellar to spy on me." Wait, wrong name. Willow Creek Estates changed dramatically. Under Mrs. Rossi's leadership, the HOA threw out the toxic rules, adopted transparency, and even started a community project to plant native flora and create safe habitats, including a large bat house right on the edge of the neighborhood. The community, once paranoid and divided, finally trusted each other. As for Brenda, I heard she finally sold her house, moved out of state, and is now living in a community with no HOA. And I have it on good authority that one of the kits, a particularly bold, scent-happy male, still visits my yard occasionally. I call him Brenda Jr., a little fragrant reminder that sometimes justice is served best when it comes with a strong, lingering odor. So what about you? What's the line between protecting property values and being a toxic presence in a community? Was my skunk trap unethical, or was it a justified, proportional response to a woman actively trying to commit fraud and ruin my life? Drop your thoughts, your HOA nightmares, and your best skunk-related jokes in the comments below. Let's talk about where the line of justice should be drawn. Like and subscribe for more stories where nature fights back.